The deep blackness of space stretched out before Zithella as she hovered within the observation deck of the Krell Dominion's research vessel, Ilianis. The ice moon Nidros II loomed ahead, bathed in the cold glow of distant stars. The vessel had just arrived at the outer rim of the system, and Zithella couldn't help but feel the weight of the discovery they were about to make. Nidros II had been a forgotten satellite, too far from any major colonies to have ever been mapped extensively. But now, after years of painstaking scans, Zithella and her team had found something remarkable. An ancient human artifact, buried beneath the frozen surface. It wasn't just any relic. This was something much older, something that spoke to the lost legacy of the human race. She had heard the stories, of course. Every species had their own mythos surrounding humanity, most of it either exaggerated or entirely fabricated. The Tesseri spoke of the human scourge, a brief but terrifying conflict where humanity supposedly ravaged entire sectors with weapons of incomprehensible destruction. The Vorm whispered of a mysterious Oblivion fleet, a fleet so powerful that it could erase entire stars. Zithella had always regarded these tales with skepticism. After all, humans had been extinct for over 1,000 years, wiped out in the catastrophic collapse of Sol. But this was something else entirely. Zithella couldn't suppress the thrill coursing through her veins as she watched the artifact's coordinates flare to life on her console. The signal was weak, buried deep within Nidros II's icy crust, but it was unmistakable. A signal of human origin. It was encrypted, scattered across millions of fragments. But it was a start, a discovery that could change everything. "Are you sure you want to begin?" came the voice of Irex, her robotic assistant, breaking her reverie. The artificial intelligence's voice had no warmth, but Zithella had grown used to its precise, neutral tones. "Absolutely," she replied, her fingers already moving over the console to begin the decryption process. "This is our chance to understand what really happened to humanity, and if we can uncover what they left behind, we might gain the upper hand in our dealings with the other galactic powers." She couldn't help but feel a sense of destiny pulled her toward the task. Humanity had always been portrayed as a fallen race, doomed to extinction. But what if the real story was far different? What if they had left something behind that could change the balance of power in the galaxy? As the first strands of data began to decode, Zithella's eyes widened. It wasn't just an artifact. It was a blueprint of sorts, a diagram for something vast and complex, an intricate design that no other species could fathom. She felt a sudden, unsettling realization creeping over her. This wasn't merely a relic of a dead species. It was a weapon that humanity had built long before their fall. Before she could process this new information, the screen flickered. A warning flashed across the console. Encryption decoded. Message detected. The message was short, cryptic, and chilling. "Do not awaken it." Stella froze, her heart pounding. Her breath caught in her throat as the implications settled in. She had opened a door, one that perhaps should have stayed closed. And now, the universe had noticed. The quiet hum of the research vessel was broken by a low, ominous tremor. Stella turned sharply toward the main viewing screen. Something was wrong. The space around Nidros II shimmered faintly. She leaned closer, eyes narrowing. A ship. A massive ship, unlike anything Stella had ever seen, was appearing out of nowhere. Suddenly, the communication system buzzed to life. The voice on the other end was calm, but there was a dark undertone. "You've made a grave mistake." Stella's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" she demanded, but the transmission abruptly cut off, leaving only silence. And the ship was getting closer. The Ilianis shuddered as a ripple of energy pulsed through the ship, a force that felt like it came from the very depths of space itself. Zithella's heart raced. The ship, the one that appeared out of nowhere, was still approaching, its massive silhouette now dominating the view screen. It was unlike any vessel she had ever seen. Its sleek, obsidian hull seemed to absorb the very light around it, giving it an almost ghostly quality. A low hum vibrated through the ship's hull, the unsettling sound reverberating in her bones. "Captain," Stella said, her voice barely steady, "there's something wrong. We need tow." Before she could finish, the ship's communication system crackled to life once more, cutting through the tension like a blade. "You've awakened it. The fleet is coming." The voice was distorted, metallic, a cold, emotionless tone. It sounded like it came from an artificial intelligence, one far older than anything Stella had encountered. The words echoed through her mind, sending a chill down her spine. The fleet. What fleet? A flash of static filled the screen as a new image appeared. An ancient human symbol, one Stella had seen in the old legends of the human scourge. It depicted a stylized ship surrounded by stars, with jagged lines cutting through them, as if to represent destruction itself. The symbol was burned into her memory as she realized what it represented. The Oblivion Fleet. "Captain," Stella cried, turning to the ship's bridge. The Oblivion-class ships were real. "This isn't just an artifact. We've awakened a weapon, a fleet capable of destroying entire stars." Captain Verrill Sane, a no-nonsense forum officer, stood by the main console, his jaw clenched in frustration. His golden scales gleamed beneath the bridge lights as his eyes scanned the incoming data. "This is no ordinary ship," he muttered. "The sensor readings are off the charts. It's as if the laws of physics are bending around it." The ship's voice crackled through the comms again, growing more urgent. "You are not prepared for what's coming. The fleet has been in hiding for eons. You thought humanity was extinct, but you were wrong." Stella's pulse quickened as she struggled to grasp the enormity of the situation. The implications were staggering. The humans, the species thought to be long extinct, had created something far worse than anyone had imagined. A fleet so powerful, so devastating, that it could erase entire star systems from existence. "How do we stop it?" Stella asked, her voice tight with panic. Captain Sane was silent for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he studied the ship's incoming trajectory. His tone was grim. "We don't. Not without help. We'll need to call for reinforcements. The other factions, they have to know about this. If humanity's fleet is really out there, we're all at risk." Stella's mind raced as she processed the enormity of what they were facing. The Concord of Sentient Worlds, the very organization she had been a part of, was about to learn a terrifying truth. Humanity's weaponized fleet, presumed lost forever, was alive and well. And they were coming. Suddenly, the ship's AI voice boomed through the comms once more, louder this time, as if to drive the point home. "You are not the first to awaken us. You won't be the last." A blinding flash of light illuminated the space ahead, and the shadow of the mysterious ship began to grow larger in the view screen. It was moving with terrifying speed, closing in on the Ilianis with unnatural precision. The realization hit Stella like a physical blow. The fleet wasn't just a weapon. It was a reminder. A warning. The galaxy had forgotten humanity's legacy, but now it was about to remember. Too late. "Set a course for the Sol graveyard," Captain Sane ordered. "We need to know how to stop this. We need to find the source. All systems to full power. We're leaving now." As the Ilianis powered up and broke away from the moon's gravity, Stella glanced back at the distant glimmer of Nitro's eye. The artifact she had uncovered was no longer just an archaeological find. It was the key to humanity's dark, forgotten past, and it was drawing them all closer to a confrontation they were not prepared for. The galaxy was about to learn a horrifying truth. Humanity's forgotten fleet was awake, and it had only just begun to move. The silence of space was deafening as the Ilianis hurtled through the vast emptiness toward the remains of the Sol system. Stella stood at the observation window, her eyes scanning the void. The stars that once bathed the system in light now seemed distant, cold. The iconic planets that had once orbited Earth were either long gone or nothing more than charred remnants of their former selves. "Coordinates locked," Captain Sane's voice came from behind her. He approached, his golden scales shimmering faintly in the dim light of the bridge. "We're entering the Sol graveyard. You said there might be something still intact here. Are you sure?" Zithella didn't turn to face him. Her gaze was fixed on the haunting view of the destroyed system. "I'm sure. There's a station, something humanity built to monitor the system's end. It should be here. If it's still operational, it might hold the key to understanding what really happened." Sane nodded, though there was doubt in his eyes. The Oblivion-class ships were one thing, but the sheer scale of destruction he was witnessing made him question the sanity of the human race before its downfall. A fleet that could destroy stars was beyond comprehension, and now, it seemed, the remnants of humanity's power were awakening again. As they crossed the boundary of the Sol system, the Ilianus was met with a horrifying sight. Earth, once the cradle of human civilization, was a shattered shell. Nothing but a ring of debris circled the point where the planet had once been, the remnants of its atmosphere still swirling like a ghost of its former self. Mars, too, had been devastated, its surface scorched to a glassy wasteland. "This is where it all ended," Zithella whispered, her voice heavy with the weight of the past. "Humanity didn't just lose their home, they lost everything. And the fleet, it wasn't just a weapon. It was the last desperate move, a way to erase any trace of humanity's existence." Captain Sane turned back to the controls, his jaw tightening. And yet, something survived. Humanity may have fallen, but their legacy is far from erased. Ahead of them, an ancient space station loomed. Its once pristine hull was now weathered and covered in layers of space dust, but it still maintained its shape. The station was enormous, larger than anything Sane had ever seen. Zithella's pulse quickened as she recognized the structure. "That's Kairos," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "The last command hub of the Oblivion fleet. This is where the fleet was supposed to have been decommissioned." Sane adjusted the ship's course, guiding the Ilianus toward the station. As they approached, the station's massive docking bay slowly opened with an eerie mechanical groan. Despite the centuries of disrepair, the system seemed to have held itself together. But there was something unsettling about it, something that made Zithella's skin crawl. "We'll dock inside," Captain Sane said, his voice a mix of resolve and caution. "Prepare yourself, Zithella. This isn't going to be easy." The Ilianus glided into the docking bay, the sound of its engines echoing through the dark, empty space. Zithella couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the station itself was alive in some way. The weight of history pressed down on her as they stepped into the station, the echoing silence broken only by the faint hum of long-dead machinery. Inside, the station was in disarray. Halls once bustling with human activity were now eerily still, their walls lined with cracked displays and broken consoles. The air felt thick, as if it had been trapped here for centuries, unbreathable and stale. "Over here," Zithella said, gesturing to a central console. It was covered in dust, but she could make out the faint outline of a control panel. "This is where they activated the fleet's final orders. If we can access this, we might find out where the ships are now, and how to stop them." Sane moved forward, his gloved hands brushing aside the debris. As he began interfacing with the control panel, the screens flickered to life, casting a dim light over the room. Stella watched as the interface booted up, lines of alien code appearing in an ancient language she could barely recognize. And then, suddenly, a familiar symbol flashed across the screen, the same one that had appeared in the mysterious transmission. It was the Oblivion Fleet's emblem. Before she could say anything, a low, rumbling voice echoed through the station's intercom system. "You should not have come here." Zithella's heart stopped. The voice wasn't mechanical. It was human. Sane's eyes widened. "Is this a recording?" The voice continued, colder now, as if it was speaking directly to them. "The fleet was never meant to be stopped. And now it will return." Stella's mind raced. The human voice, the one that spoke through the station's intercom, was not a ghost, but a message left behind. Humanity had planned for something far more sinister than anyone had ever realized, and they weren't just dealing with a fleet anymore. They were dealing with something far darker. The Oblivion fleet was waking up, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Stella's hands trembled as the voice from the KAIROS station echoed in her mind. The fleet was never meant to be stopped. The words were a haunting reminder of the power that humanity had once wielded, and the terrifying possibility that they might once again. Captain Sane stepped away from the console, his expression grim. "We need to keep moving," he said, his voice steady despite the unease in his eyes. "Whatever this message is, we don't have time to unpack it right now. If there's one thing we've learned, it's that humanity's legacy is far from extinct." Stella nodded, her mind reeling. The remnants of the human fleet, self-sustaining, autonomous warships capable of obliterating entire stars, had been hidden away for centuries, awaiting activation. The Oblivion-class ships were never meant to be a tool of defense. They were weapons of mass destruction, created by a civilization that had already teetered on the edge of annihilation before they had even lost their homeworld. "Can we get more data on the fleet?" Stella asked, trying to push her anxiety aside. "Anything that might tell us where they're headed. How many of them are still operational?" Sane shook his head. "I've tapped into the station's mainframe, but it's damaged. Whatever data remains is fragmented and encrypted beyond anything I've seen. It's like they tried to erase themselves from history." He paused, his gaze hardening. "But we do have a lead." Stella turned sharply. "What kind of lead?" Sane activated the console once more, the screen flickering with static before displaying a series of coordinates, a star system at the galaxy's edge. This system, it's where the fleet's final command was issued from, where the last of the Oblivion-class ships were hidden. The coordinates pointed to a location deep within the Lithra expanse, a region of space known for its treacherous navigation and violent gravitational anomalies. Few ships dared enter it. It was a place where even the most advanced sensors struggled to penetrate the thick nebula and distorted spacetime. "How do we know this isn't just a dead end?" Stella asked, her voice tight with caution. Sane's expression softened slightly. "Because this station wouldn't still be functioning if there wasn't something there. If the fleet truly was destroyed, there wouldn't be anything left to activate it." Stella took a deep breath, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on her chest. Humanity's final act had been one of desperation, an attempt to wield ultimate power, to erase the remnants of their civilization, and control the very fabric of the galaxy. The Oblivion fleet had been the ultimate weapon. And now someone, or something, was bringing it back to life. "Then we have no choice," Stella said, her voice firm. "We have to go there. We have to find out what's really left." Sane didn't hesitate. "Set a course," he ordered. "The Lithra expanse it is." As the Ilianus powered up and began its jump to the coordinates, Stella's mind raced with questions. Why had humanity hidden such a dangerous legacy? Who, or what, was behind the fleet's awakening? And most importantly, what kind of threat were they facing now? She paced the small command room, her thoughts spiraling. The fleet's activation wasn't random. It was a deliberate act, as if someone had waited for centuries, biding their time, until the perfect moment to awaken this ancient war machine. The message from the station kept replaying in her mind. The fleet was never meant to be stopped. "Stella," Sane called from the console, snapping her from her thoughts. "We've got incoming transmission. Unknown origin." Her heart skipped. "Put it through." The screen flickered again, revealing a cryptic message. The image was distorted, but one thing was clear. A humanoid figure, their face obscured by a hood, stood in front of a backdrop of shifting stars. "You are too late." Stella's breath caught. The figure's voice was cold, authoritative. "The fleet is already moving. It will be unstoppable once it reaches the core. You will not survive." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving only the sound of static. Captain Sane stared at the screen, his expression unreadable. "We've been marked. They know we're coming." Stella felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Whoever was behind the fleet's awakening wasn't just aware of them. They were actively trying to keep them from stopping it. And that meant one thing. They were running out of time. "We need to hurry," Stella said, her voice low. "If we don't, the galaxy will fall under the shadow of humanity's forgotten wrath." The Ilianis entered the Lithra expanse with a low hum, its engines groaning against the dense nebula and gravitational anomalies. The ship shuddered as it passed through layers of unstable spacetime, distorting the stars outside into flickering streaks of light. Stella stood by the bridge window, her eyes fixed on the swirling clouds of gas and radiation that stretched before them. The expanse was as foreboding as the legends had described, alive with cosmic danger, yet it held secrets deep within its heart. Approaching the coordinates, Captain Sane's voice broke the silence, his hand steady on the ship's controls. The Vorm's golden scales reflected the pale glow of distant stars, his usually calm demeanor now laced with tension. Stella turned to face him, her gaze narrowed. "Do you feel it?" she asked quietly, her senses heightened. "The pull. Something's out there." Sane met her eyes for a brief moment, his expression unreadable. "I feel it. Whatever's waiting, it's not something we're supposed to find." Just as he finished speaking, a low rumble passed through the ship. The lights flickered, and the instruments on the bridge beeped erratically. Stella gripped the edge of the console, her heart skipping a beat. They had crossed into a section of the expanse where space itself seemed to bend, like a pressure point in the fabric of the universe. "Adjusting course," Sane muttered, his fingers dancing over the controls. The ship lurched as he wrestled with the gravitational forces. "We're too close to the event horizon of a black hole. If we don't correct now, we'll be pulled in." Stella's pulse raced as the ship fought against the immense forces at play. The expanse was alive with dangerous energy fields and invisible traps, and they had just entered its most chaotic zone. The Ilianis groaned in protest as it navigated through a swirling mess of dark matter and unstable gravity wells. "We have to keep moving," Stella shouted. "We can't stop now." Sane gritted his teeth. "I know. I'm pushing the engines to their limit. If we don't reach the station soon, we'll be caught in the gravity of the black hole." The bridge was bathed in a sickly green light as the ship strained against the pull of the black hole's event horizon. The gravitational forces were so intense that even the sound seemed warped, as if time itself was slowing down. Stella could feel it in her bones, the pressure, the stretch of space bending around them. It was like they were falling into an abyss that reached back through time. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed through the ship. A violent jolt threw Stella against the bulkhead, her vision momentarily blurred. Sane cursed under his breath, the ship groaning as it buckled under the strain. "Captain, what was that?" Stella demanded, struggling to regain her footing. The Vorm clenched his fists. "Something hit us. Something outside the hull. Get to the forward observation deck. Now." Stella didn't hesitate. She darted down the narrow corridor, her mind racing. Whatever had struck them wasn't just debris. The impact had been too precise, too deliberate. She reached the observation deck in moments, where a grim sight met her eyes. An enormous shape, dark as the void, floated just outside the Ilianis. "It's the ship," she whispered. "The shadowy vessel. The one that had first contacted them. The one that had warned them they were too late. Loomed larger than ever. It was no longer a distant anomaly. It was here, in the heart of the Lithra expanse, waiting for them." Stella felt a chill as she studied the vessel's form. It was the same ship from the earlier transmissions, the one that had given them the cryptic warning. But now, as it hovered closer, Stella saw it for what it truly was. A monstrous construct, a hybrid of organic and mechanical components, its surface alive with pulsating lights and shifting patterns. It wasn't just a ship, it was a weapon. "They're here," she whispered, barely able to believe it. The Oblivion fleet was no longer a distant threat. It was right on their doorstep, waiting for the right moment to strike. The transmission system crackled to life, cutting through the tension. The same cold, metallic voice spoke, louder and clearer than before. "You cannot escape." Zithella's heart sank as the full weight of their situation hit her. The fleet was here, and the figure who had contacted them, the one behind the fleet's awakening, was now closer than ever. "We need to fight back," Stella said, her voice filled with cold determination. "We don't have time to wait for reinforcements. If we're going to stop them, we need to take the fight to them now." Sane's eyes were grim. "We don't have the firepower to go up against that thing, not without knowing its weaknesses." Stella paused, her mind racing through the possibilities. The Ilianus wasn't equipped to battle a fleet of Oblivion-class ships, but there had to be a way to disable the weapon they were facing. There had to be a way to strike before the fleet could fully awaken. A shiver ran down her spine as a single thought crossed her mind. What if we're already too late? The shadow of the massive, hybrid ship loomed outside the Ilianus, its black hull a haunting silhouette against the chaos of the expanse. Stella stood frozen, staring at the vessel through the observation deck window. She had seen destruction before, but never something like this. The ship wasn't just a weapon. It was a living thing, its form pulsating with strange energy, shifting like it was breathing. Captain Sane's voice broke through the silence. "It's circling us, preparing to make contact." He turned to Zithella, his face stern. "We have no choice. We have to act now." Zithella felt a pang of dread in her chest. There was something undeniably wrong about this situation. Whatever this ship was, it wasn't just part of the fleet. It was something else, something worse. And the figure who had sent them the warning. It was clear now that they were no mere survivor of humanity. They were the architect of this awakening. "I'll gather the team," Zithella said, forcing herself to move, her mind racing with the implications. She had been hoping for a solution, a way to unravel the truth behind the fleet, to find the weakness in the ships. But now, that hope seemed distant. The situation was spiraling out of control faster than she could keep up with. As she made her way to the command center, the alarms blared throughout the ship, a constant reminder that time was slipping away. Every second counted. They had no backup, no reinforcements. The Ilianus was the last line of defense against a force they had only just begun to understand. Sane was already at the console, his fingers flying over the controls, trying to make sense of the incoming data. "We've entered its firing range. Whatever it is, it's locking onto us." "What about our weapons?" Zithella asked, hurrying to his side. "Too weak. The Oblivion-class ships are designed to withstand far more than anything we've got. And this ship," Sane's voice faltered for a moment as he looked up at the view screen. "It's not like any human design I've seen. It's a hybrid, a weaponized organism. We're dealing with something far older than even the Oblivion fleet." Zithella's stomach twisted. If the Oblivion-class ships were already more than they could handle, this hybrid vessel was a whole other level of nightmare. Her mind flashed back to the images of Earth's destruction, how humanity had unleashed the fleet, desperate to erase their own existence. "We need to buy time," she said, her voice steady despite the growing terror. "I'll try to access the station's remaining systems. There has to be something, some way to shut it down from here." Sane nodded. "We're with you, Zithella. But be quick." She rushed back to the console, her fingers dancing over the keys. The interface was primitive by today's standards, but it held ancient data, encrypted far beyond anything she had encountered. Zithella's heart pounded as the interface flickered to life once more. The hybrid chip's signal was getting stronger. It wasn't just waiting. It was feeding off the energy in the expanse, building power, preparing for something. She opened a deeper layer of the station's data files, bypassing several security measures. The codes were fragmented, but she could make out a few lines of text. "Containment protocol. Activate immediately. The expanse's core will destabilize upon awakening. All systems must be sealed." Zithella's breath caught in her throat. Containment. It wasn't a weapon. They were trying to contain something. What do you mean? Sane asked, stepping closer. She shook her head, her voice almost a whisper. Whatever humanity was running from, it's still here. That ship, it wasn't meant to be a weapon of war. It was part of an ancient containment system. If it's activated, then the galaxy, no, everything, could be at risk. Containment for what? Sane demanded, urgency in his voice. Something that even humanity was afraid of. We don't have much time. Zithella's fingers flew across the keyboard. We need to stop the hybrid ship before it triggers the chain reaction in the expanse. If it's feeding off the energy here, it's only a matter of time before the entire region destabilizes. And that ship, it's the key. The alarm blared louder, signaling an incoming attack. Zithella, Sane shouted, we need to act now. Without hesitation, Zithella slammed her palm on the emergency override button. The lights dimmed, and the ship shuddered as a powerful force rippled through the Ilianis. For a moment, everything fell silent. Then, the hybrid ship fired. The moment the hybrid ship fired, the Ilianis was thrown backward, its hull creaking under the strain. A blinding wave of energy washed over them, searing through the atmosphere like a ripple through water. The force hit Zithella like a physical blow, sending her tumbling to the floor. The lights flickered once, twice, and then the ship was plunged into darkness, save for the dim emergency glow. Report. Captain Sane's voice was firm, but Zithella could hear the undercurrent of panic. The ship was groaning, and the tremors running through the hull felt like the Ilianis was being torn apart piece by piece. Zithella pushed herself up, her head pounding. I'm okay, she said, wiping blood from her lip, though her breath was uneven. She didn't wait for confirmation from the rest of the crew. She reached for the emergency console, her fingers trembling as she brought it to life. The ship's systems were still functional, barely. She had a few minutes before whatever the hybrid ship had fired would rip them apart. Sane, Zithella said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. That ship, it's not just a weapon. It's a conduit, an amplifier. It's channeling all the energy from the Lithra expanse into something else. What do you mean? Sane demanded, sounding more urgent than before. You're saying it's not just a blast. What is it doing? Zithella paused, struggling to process the revelation. It's amplifying something. Something ancient. Something dormant beneath the expanse. The ship is using the black hole's energy to awaken what was sealed. If we don't stop it now, the chain reaction could tear apart this region of space, and everything in it. Her words hung in the air like a death sentence. The expanse, a volatile region already plagued with instability, was now at the mercy of a force far more dangerous than anyone could have predicted. It was as if the ship was summoning an ancient, slumbering horror, one that could destroy entire star systems. We need to get out of here, Sane said sharply, the desperation creeping into his voice. If this ship can awaken whatever it's been containing, we're all dead. Not yet, Zithella replied quickly, her mind racing. We have one chance to stop this. We need to disrupt its energy source, stop the amplification process. But we can't do it from here. The hybrid ship fired again, and the entire ship lurched violently. This time, the Ilianis was thrown to the side. Zithella's console sparked, and the lights dimmed further, leaving them in near total darkness. We're running out of time, she muttered, trying to steady herself. Sane, I need you to get us to the hybrid ship. We have to board it. Disable the energy core before it can complete the process. Captain Sane's eyes flashed with a mix of disbelief and determination. You're asking us to board that thing. It's a death trap. It's the only way, Zithella shot back. That ship has its own power source. If we destroy it, we can stop the chain reaction. But we'll need to get inside before it's too late. The air around them hummed with tension. The hybrid ship loomed larger now, its surface shifting with unnatural fluidity, as if it were alive. Pulsating lights moved across its hull, each flash sending waves of nausea through Zithella. Whatever it was, whatever had been sealed away in the expanse, it was waking up, and the hybrid ship was its herald. "We don't have much time," Sane said, his voice colder now. He looked at Cthella with a resolve that she hadn't seen before. "We'll follow your lead. But this is going to be the hardest thing we've ever done." Stella nodded grimly, feeling the weight of his words. She knew what was at stake. If they failed, the hybrid ship would complete its mission, and the Expanse's core would collapse. It would drag the entire galaxy into a dark abyss from which it could never recover. The Ilianus steadied itself, its engines pushing against the overwhelming forces of the Expanse's gravity. Stella watched the hybrid ship draw closer on the view screen. They had no choice now. The only way to stop this catastrophe was to face the very heart of the machine, the force that had been unleashed. The crew scrambled to prepare for what was to come. Stella could feel the tension in her bones. The air felt thick, charged with the energy of something ancient and unstoppable. "We board in 5 minutes," Sane said, his voice final. Stella took one last look at the hybrid ship, its outline growing ever clearer. The countdown had begun. The galaxy's fate was now in their hands, and there was no turning back. The countdown to the boarding operation was relentless. Stella felt the weight of each passing second like a hammer against her chest. She had no illusions. This mission was a suicide run. But it was the only option left. The Ilianus had sustained significant damage, and there was no time for a tactical retreat. If they didn't act now, the Expanse would collapse, taking everything within its reach, including their lives. "We're close," Captain Sane's voice crackled over the intercom, his tone as steely as ever. "Prepare for launch. Everyone, gear up. We board in 2 minutes." Stella glanced at the crew, her mind flashing back to the faces of those who had joined her on this doomed mission. They weren't soldiers. They were survivors. Each one had their own reasons for being here, fighting a battle they hadn't signed up for. And now, they were on the brink of something far worse than any of them had anticipated. The hybrid ship, still pulsing with alien energy, was only a few kilometers away. Stella was strapped into the combat harness of the boarding pod, her pulse steady despite the chaos around her. Sane stood beside her, his sharp eyes focused on the approaching ship. The Ilianus hung just outside the hybrid vessel's gravitational pull, offering them a narrow window of opportunity to board. "Are we ready?" she asked, her voice low but resolute. "We're ready," Sane confirmed. "This is it. Once we're on board, there's no turning back." Stella nodded. She understood. It wasn't just about stopping a weapon anymore. It was about stopping the galaxy from descending into a new kind of darkness. The Expanse's core, the black hole, and whatever was buried within it. If they didn't sever the link between the hybrid ship and that ancient force, there was no telling what kind of horrors would be unleashed. The pod's launch thrusters engaged, and Stella felt the sudden thrust as the vessel shot toward the hybrid ship. It loomed larger and larger in their view, its organic mechanical surface rippling, alive with a sickly glow. The closer they got, the more distorted reality seemed to become. The pull of the ship's energy felt like a weight pressing down on her chest, like the very fabric of space was bending in ways it shouldn't. "Approaching docking point," Sane said, his fingers deftly working the controls to align the pod's trajectory. The pod collided with the hybrid ship with a violent thud, the docking clamps locking into place. A series of alarms blared as the airlock engaged, and Stella's breath quickened. The crew unstrapped their harnesses, and weapons were drawn. The moment the door slid open, the cold void of the hybrid ship's corridor greeted them. A vast, cavernous hall lined with pulsating lights, every inch of it exuding an alien, almost living quality. "Stay sharp," Stella ordered, her voice steady as she led the crew down the dimly lit hall. The walls around them seemed to breathe, their surface shifting like it had a mind of its own. She could feel the faint hum of energy in the air, growing louder with every step they took. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The ship's interior was unlike anything Stella had ever encountered. A maze of organic corridors and technological tendrils, twisting and weaving together in a grotesque fusion of biology and machinery. It felt as though they were walking through the veins of something ancient and alien. "We're getting close," Stella whispered, her gaze fixed ahead. The core, she could feel it, pulsing like a heart at the center of the vessel. It was almost within reach. But as they neared the heart of the ship, a sudden vibration rocked the entire structure. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the walls, filling the corridor with a chilling presence. "You should not have come. This is the end of your kind." Stella's blood ran cold. The voice was not human. It was something else, something far older. The ship was alive, conscious, and it was speaking directly to them. "We need to move faster," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "The core is close. We disable it. We stop everything." The crew nodded, their expressions grim but resolute. They pushed forward, each step bringing them closer to the ship's center. They were about to face the heart of the machine, a force so powerful that it had been hidden away for centuries, kept in check by humanity's last desperate measure. They'd reached the central chamber. The energy core was enormous, thrumming with raw, untamed power. It was surrounded by tendrils of living metal, pulsating in rhythm with the energy. But there was something more, a presence, a consciousness emanating from the core. It was waiting. Without a word, Stella charged forward, firing at the tendrils. Her team followed suit, their weapons cutting through the air. The battle for the galaxy's survival had reached its final stage.